Scholar Tevin stood before his students in the Great Hall of Learning. The young ones looked up at him with big, curious eyes. They were eager to hear the old stories. Tevin was the oldest teacher in the Veli Confederation. He had studied ancient history for 300 years. Today, he would tell them about the walkers. Long ago, Tevin began, his voice soft and low, there was a species so dangerous that the galaxy tried to forget them. The students leaned forward. They loved scary stories. They called themselves humans, Tevin continued. They came from a world of death, a planet where the very air was poison. The ground shook and split open with fire. Giant beasts hunted in every shadow. And yet somehow these creatures survived. A young student raised her hand. How could anything live on such a world? Tevin smiled sadly. That is what made them so terrifying, child. They did not just live. They conquered. They tamed the fire. They killed the beasts. They breathed the poison air and grew strong from it. The students laughed nervously. This sounded impossible. The old texts say their blood runs red with iron, Tevin said. They feel pain, but do not stop fighting. They grow tired, but refuse to rest. They watch their friends die and become angry instead of afraid. The ancient ones called them the walkers between stars. But they are just myths, another student said. Stories to scare children. Edvan nodded slowly. Yes, that is what we believe. That is what we must believe. Far away, at the edge of Confederation space, a small observation outpost floated in the darkness. Officer Kell sat at his station, bored and tired. Nothing ever happened out here. This was the forgotten corner of the galaxy. No trade ships came this way. No pirates bothered with empty space. Kell was about to take a nap when his screen flashed red. He sat up quickly. The sensors had detected something. 17 objects were moving toward Confederation space. They were coming from the dead zone, the region of space that was marked as empty on every map. Kell checked his equipment. It was working fine. He looked at the readings again. The objects were definitely ships. Big ships. And they were moving fast. He opened a communication channel. Command, this is Outpost 7. I have unknown vessels entering our sector. 17 ships. Origin unknown. There was silence. Then a voice replied, Outpost 7. Check your sensors. There is nothing in that region. No colonies. No civilizations. You must have an error. No error, Kell said, his voice shaking now. They are real, and they are sending a signal. The signal played through his speakers. It was strange, musical, unlike any language in the Confederation database. Kell stared at his screen as the ships came closer. Their design was unlike anything he had ever seen, but somewhere in his memory, he remembered something. An old carving in a museum. Ships that looked just like these. Ships from a story that was 12,000 years old. His blood turned cold. On the bridge of the flagship Dawn of Terra, Admiral Park Tejo stood with his hands behind his back. He looked through the great window at the stars ahead. These were new stars. Unknown stars. For 500 years, humanity had rebuilt after the Great Silence. They had found ancient records of their ancestors traveling to distant galaxies. Now the Terran fleet had finally followed that path. Captain Kim Yuna walked up beside him. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a fierce heart. The signal is sent, Admiral, she said. Standard greeting in all known frequencies. If anyone is out there, they know we come in peace. Admiral Park nodded slowly. And if they do not want peace, Yuna smiled. Then they will learn why our ancestors became legends. Below deck, Dr. Lee Hanna worked in her laboratory. She was the chief language expert on the ship. Her job was to communicate with any aliens they might find. She had studied every dead language in human history. She hoped she would be ready. Her assistant, Lieutenant Choi Woo-jin, poked his head through the door. He was young and excited. Dr. Lee, we are getting close. Can you believe it? First contact with real aliens. Hana looked up from her work. I believe it. I am also terrified. We do not know what they will think of us. We do not know if they will be friendly. Ujin grinned. They will love us. Everyone loves humans. Anna shook her head. Young people were always so confident. In the Marine barracks, Sergeant Beek Sua checked her weapons. She was a soldier, not a diplomat. She hoped the aliens would be peaceful. She really did. But if they were not, she and her team were ready. She thought about Earth, about her family back home. They had waited so long for this moment. Humanity had been alone in their corner of the universe. They had wondered if they were the only intelligent life. Now, they were about to find out. Back in the Confederation, Scholar Tevin ended his lesson. The students filed out, chatting about the silly old myths. Tevin watched them go with worried eyes. He had studied the ancient texts more carefully than anyone. He had seen drawings of the Walker ships. He knew the old warnings. And in the deepest part of his heart, he feared that the myths were not myths at all. Somewhere in his bones, he felt a change coming. The galaxy was about to wake up to an old truth. The Walkers were coming home. Admiral Park Tahoe gave the order. All ships maintain formation. We move forward together. Whatever we find out there, we face it as one. The 17 human ships sailed deeper into unknown space. They carried with them the hopes of an entire species. They did not know that ahead of them, an empire was about to learn fear. The stars waited in silence. History was about to change forever. The news spread through the Confederation like fire. Unknown ships had entered their space. The High Council met in emergency session. High Arbiter Nolith sat in the great chair, listening to the reports with growing anger. 17 ships, Commander Drail said. They came from the dead zone. They are holding position near Kethos Prime. Nolith leaned forward. What do they want? They sent a greeting signal. Our translators are working on it now. But High Arbiter, the ship designs match something in our oldest records. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. Priestess Amori stepped forward. She was old and bent, but her eyes were bright. The prophecy speaks of this day. The walkers between stars will return when the galaxy needs them most. Nolith waved his hand. Enough with your prophecies. These are just travelers. Pirates, perhaps. Or lost colonists. We will send a delegation to meet them. He looked at Amori. You will go. Take our best diplomats. Find out who these strangers are. The Veli delegation ship traveled for 3 days. Priestess Amori spent most of the journey reading the old texts. The words filled her with both hope and fear. When they arrived at the meeting point, the human ships were waiting. They floated in perfect formation. Their hulls were gray and strong. Their weapons were visible, but not aimed. On the human side, Dr. Lee Hanna prepared for the meeting. She wore her best uniform. Her hands were shaking. Calm down, Captain Kim, Yuna said. You've trained your whole life for this. I trained to translate dead languages, Hanna replied. Not to meet living aliens. Admiral Park Tahoe put a hand on her shoulder. Just be yourself, Doctor. Show them who we are. The two groups met on a neutral station between the fleets. The Veli delegation walked in first. They were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. They moved gracefully like dancers. Then the humans entered. The Veli froze. The humans were not what they expected. They were shorter than Veli, but much thicker. Their bodies were dense with muscle. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink, and their eyes, their terrifying eyes, moved independently. They could look at multiple things at once. One of the humans smiled in greeting. The Veli stepped back in fear. The human was showing teeth. Sharp, white teeth. Like a predator about to attack, Dr. Lee Hanna noticed their reaction. She closed her mouth quickly. I am sorry, she said through the translator device. That was a friendly gesture. We mean no harm. Priestess Amori recovered first. She studied the human woman carefully. This creature matched every description in the ancient texts. The iron blood. The predator's smile. The impossible endurance. You are real, Amori whispered. The walkers are real. Hanna tilted her head. I do not understand. We are humans. From a planet called Earth, talks continued for hours. Both sides shared information carefully. The Veli learned that humans came from a distant galaxy. The humans learned about the Confederation, its many species, its long history. But tension remained. The Veli diplomats kept staring at the humans with barely hidden fear. Everything about these creatures was unsettling. They sat too still. They breathed too slowly. Their hearts beat with a rhythm that sounded like war drums. During a break in the talks, an accident happened. A support beam in the station came loose. It fell toward a young Veli technician. Lieutenant Choi Woo-jin moved without thinking. He ran forward and caught the beam with his bare hands. The metal was heavy, almost 300 kilograms. He held it up while the technician escaped, then threw it aside. The Veli watched in horror. No single being should be that strong. It was impossible. Woo-jin rubbed his shoulder and smiled. "Are you okay?" he asked the technician. The young Veli could not speak. He just stared. That night, the Veli delegation sent a secret report to the High Council. They described everything they had seen. The strength, the teeth, the strange calm in human eyes. High Arbiter Nolith read the report 3 times. He did not believe it. "They are lying," he said. "They are using tricks and technology to seem powerful." "This is a deception," Commander Drail nodded. "I agree, High Arbiter. We should show them the strength of the Confederation. They entered our space without permission. They must learn respect," Nola thought for a long moment. "Take a fleet to Kethos, a large fleet. Remind these strangers where they are." Back on the human ships, Captain Kim Yuna noticed changes in the Veli behavior. Their messages became shorter. Their voices became colder. She went to Admiral Park Taeho. "Something is wrong. They are afraid of us, but fear can become anger very quickly," the Admiral agreed. "Alert all ships. Maintain peace, but prepare for trouble." Dr. Lee Hanna sat alone in her quarters. She thought about Priestess Amori. The old alien had looked at her with such strange emotion, like she was seeing a ghost. What did she mean by walkers? What had humans done in this part of the galaxy so long ago? Hannah did not know it yet, but she was about to find answers she never expected. Answers that would change everything. In the distance, Veli warships began to gather. 200 vessels. The largest fleet the Confederation had sent in a century. Commander Drail stood on his bridge, confident and proud. He would teach these strange creatures a lesson they would never forget. He did not know that he was about to become the lesson. Instead, the stars watched silently as 2 civilizations moved toward a moment that would shake the galaxy. Peace was still possible, but time was running out, and somewhere in the void, Sergeant Beek Su loaded her rifle and whispered a prayer. She hoped she would not need to fight, but if she did, she would make sure the Confederation remembered the name of humanity forever. The Veli fleet arrived like a storm. 200 warships filled the space around Kethos Prime. Their weapons glowed with power. Their shields hummed with energy. Commander Drail stood on his bridge and smiled. This would be easy. The human fleet waited calmly. 17 ships against 200. The math was simple. The Confederation would crush these strange visitors in minutes. Drail opened a communication channel. His voice was cold and proud. "Unknown vessels. You have entered Confederation space without permission. You will surrender your ships immediately. Your crew will submit to our laws. Resistance will result in destruction." On the dawn of Terra, Admiral Park Taeho listened to the message. Captain Kim Yuna stood beside him, her jaw tight with anger. "They outnumber us 12-1, she said. "We should retreat." The Admiral shook his head slowly. "If we run now, they will hunt us forever. Sometimes you must stand and fight, so no one questions you again." He opened the return channel. His voice was steady and calm. "Commander Drail, we came to your space with open hands. We offered friendship. You answer with threats. I understand. You do not know who we are. Allow me to teach you." He paused, then spoke words that would echo through history. We did not cross the galaxy to kneel. If you want our surrender, come and take it. The fool was brave but stupid. He gave the order. All ships. Open fire. 200 Veli warships unleashed their weapons. Beams of light and missiles of plasma raced toward the human fleet. It was a beautiful and terrible sight. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but the human ships were not there in the time it took the Veli to fire. The Terran fleet had moved. Their engines burned with impossible speed. They scattered and regrouped in patterns that made no sense. The Veli weapons hit empty space. Drail stared at his screen in confusion. How that speed should kill any crew. On the dawn of Terra, Captain Yuna gripped her chair as the ship twisted through the void. Her body strained against the force of the movement, but she did not break. Human bodies were built for punishment. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Turn fire, Admiral Park ordered. The human weapons spoke. They were not stronger than Veli weapons, but they were different. They hit the Veli shields at angles and frequencies the Confederation had never seen. The shields flickered. Some failed completely. In the first 30 seconds, 15 Veli ships exploded. Drail felt fear for the first time. Close the distance. Board them. They cannot be that strong in close combat. He was wrong. Sergeant Beek Sua led the first boarding team onto a disabled Veli cruiser. Her Marines moved through the corridors like ghosts. Fast, silent, deadly. The Veli soldiers tried to fight back. They were trained warriors. They had won 100 battles, but they had never fought humans. Su-ah. Rounded a corner and found 10 Veli waiting for her. They opened fire. A plasma bolt struck her shoulder. The pain was like fire. She felt her skin burn, her flesh tear. She did not stop. She kept walking forward, firing her weapon, dropping enemies with every shot. The Veli watched in horror as this wounded creature advanced on them. Any other species would be dead. Any other species would be screaming. Sua was grinning. Is that all you have? She shouted. We eat worse for breakfast. The Veli broke. They ran, and Sue let them go. She was a soldier, not a monster. But she wanted them to tell others what they had seen. All across the battle, the story repeated. Human ships danced around Veli formations. Human Marines captured ship after ship. Human pilots flew through fields of fire that should have killed them instantly in 90 minutes. It was over. 140 Veli ships destroyed or captured. 60 more damaged beyond repair. Only 3 human vessels had taken serious hits. None were lost. Commander Drail sat in his command chair, surrounded by human Marines. His fleet was gone. His pride was broken. He looked up at Dr. Lihana, who had come aboard to accept his surrender. What are you? He whispered. What kind of creatures survive what you survived? Hana knelt down to look him in the eyes. Her voice was soft, but firm. Now what you forgot to fear. We are humans, and we did not come here to conquer you. We came to find friends. You chose to make us enemies instead. Drail lowered his head. For the first time in his long military career, he felt shame. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on his bridge, looking at the remains of the battle. He felt no joy, only sadness. He had hoped to avoid this. He had hoped the Confederation would be wiser. Send a message to their capital, he ordered. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we do not want war. But if they force us to fight, we will finish what they started. Back on the Veli homeworld, High Arbiter Nolith received the news. His hands trembled as he read the reports. 200 ships? The pride of the Confederation. Destroyed in less than 2 hours. Scholar Tevin was summoned to the council. When he entered, every face turned to him. Tell us about the walkers, Nolith said quietly. Tell us everything, Tevin nodded slowly. His worst fears had come true. The myths were real. And the Veli had just made the biggest mistake in their history. He opened the ancient books and began to read in the void. The human fleet waited. They had proven their strength. Now, they hoped the Confederation would choose wisdom over war. Sergeant Sua sat in the medical bay, getting her wound treated. A young doctor named Jin wrapped her shoulder carefully. "You should be dead," he said. That burn went deep. Sua shrugged with her good shoulder. "I have been dead before." It did not take. She thought about the battle, about the fear in Veli eyes. She did not want them to be afraid. She wanted them to be friends. But sometimes you had to make people fear you before they would respect you. That was the human way. That was how they had survived a world that tried to kill them. And that was why, in all the galaxy, nothing was more dangerous than a human with something to protect. Fear spread through the Confederation like a disease. The news of the battle traveled faster than any ship. 200 warships lost. An entire fleet destroyed by 17 vessels. Citizens whispered in the streets. Soldiers refused to eat. Children cried in the night. The walkers had returned, and they were angry. High Arbiter Nolith sat alone in his chamber. He had not slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the battle reports. He saw his ships burning. He saw his warriors fleeing. Scholar Tevin was brought before the full council. Every leader in the Confederation watched as the old teacher unrolled the ancient scrolls. His hands shook. His voice cracked. "The texts are 12,000 years old," he began. "They speak of a time before the Confederation. Before our civilizations rose, there was a darkness in the galaxy. A threat so terrible that it consumed world after world."
Ow.
The council listened in silence. "Then the walkers came," Tevin continued. "Beings from a distant galaxy. They were strange and frightening. Their bodies were built for war, but they did not come to conquer. They came to help," he read from the old words. "They came from a world of death. A planet that tried to kill them every day. Poison in the air. Fire in the ground. Predators in every shadow. And they conquered it all. They did not flee from pain. They did not surrender to despair. They fought for those they loved until their hearts stopped. And sometimes beyond." Council member raised her hand. "Why did they help us? What did they want?" Tevin turned the page. "The texts say they asked for nothing. They fought beside our ancestors because it was right. Because they could not watch innocent worlds die when they had the power to help." Nolith leaned forward. "What happened to them?" Tevin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "They died. All of them. They pushed the darkness back to the edge of the galaxy. They sealed it away at the cost of their own lives. Not one walker survived. They sacrificed everything so that we could live." The council sat in stunned silence. "We forgot them," Tevin said, tears running down his face. "We turned their sacrifice into stories, into myths, into warnings to frighten children. We forgot the debt we owed." Nolith stood slowly. For the first time in his long rule, he looked old and small. "And now they have returned, and we attacked them." On the human flagship, Admiral Park Teho faced his own council. Not all of his officers agreed with his decision to wait. Some wanted blood. "They attacked us without reason," Lieutenant Choi Woo-jin argued. "They tried to destroy us. We should push forward, take their worlds, make them pay." Captain Kim Yuna shook her head. "That is not why we came here. We are explorers, not conquerors." "Easy for you to say," Woo-jin shot back. "You were not on those boarding parties. You did not see the hatred in their eyes." Sergeant Beek-Sua spoke up. Her shoulder was bandaged, but her spirit was strong. "I was there," she said quietly. "I saw their eyes. And I did not see hatred. I saw fear. They were terrified of us. And when people are scared, they attack. It is not right, but it is understandable." The room went quiet. Admiral Park nodded slowly. "We will wait. We will give them time to think. If they choose war, we will fight. But I believe they will choose peace." He looked at Dr. Lee Hana. "Doctor, you have been quiet. What do you think?" Hana had been reading something on her tablet. She looked up with strange emotion in her eyes. "I received a secret message. From Priestess Amori, Everyone turned to look at her. She wants to meet. She says she knows why the ancient texts call us walkers. She says she knows what really happened 12,000 years ago. The meeting took place on a small moon between the fleets. Hana went alone, as Amori requested. The two women faced each other in an empty temple. Amori was crying. "I have waited my whole life for this moment," she said. "The prophecy spoke of your return, but I never dared to believe." Hana took her hand gently. "Tell me what happened. Tell me why your people fear us." Mori led her to an ancient painting on the wall. It showed human ships fighting against a cloud of darkness, ships shaped exactly like the dawn of Terra. 12,000 years ago, your ancestors came here, Amori explained. The darkness was consuming our worlds. We were young civilizations, weak, helpless. We prayed for salvation. She pointed to the humans in the painting. They answered, "They fought for us, died for us." When the final battle came, they flew their ships into the heart of the darkness and destroyed it from within. Not one human survived. Hana felt tears in her own eyes now. "We did not know," she whispered. "Earth lost contact with those colonies. We thought they were simply lost." Amori nodded. "And we forgot them. We let their sacrifice become myth. We became afraid of the memory instead of grateful for it." She looked into Hana's eyes. "But you are here now, the children of the heroes, and we attacked you. We are fools. We are ungrateful fools." Hana squeezed her hand. "You made a mistake. But mistakes can be forgiven. That is also the human way." When Hana returned to the fleet, she brought more than information. She brought hope. Admiral Park Tae-ho listened to her report. His eyes grew wet as she described the ancient sacrifice. All those humans, giving their lives for people they had never met. "They did not die for glory," he said softly. "They died because they could not watch innocent people suffer. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." He made his decision. "We will go to their capital. We will speak to their council, not as conquerors, but as the descendants of heroes. We will show them that humanity remembers who we are." Captain Yunus smiled. "And if they still want war?" The admiral looked at her with steady eyes. "Then we will remind them why our ancestors became legends. But I do not think it will come to that. Fear can become anger, but it can also become respect," gave the order. The human fleet began to move toward the Confederation capital. History was calling, and humanity was ready to answer. The human fleet entered the Confederation capital system slowly. No weapons were armed. No shields were raised. They came as visitors, not invaders. Millions of Veli watched from their cities as the strange ships passed overhead. Parents held their children close. Soldiers gripped their weapons with shaking hands, but no one fired. The council had given strict orders. Admiral Park Tae-ho was invited to speak before the Hall of Arbiters. It was the greatest honor the Confederation could offer. No outsider had ever been invited before. He chose his delegation carefully. Captain Kim Yuna walked at his right side. Dr. Lee Hana walked at his left. Behind them came Lieutenant Choi Woo-jen and Sergeant Beek Sua. 5 humans to face a galaxy. The Hall of Arbiters was enormous. Thousands of delegates from every Confederation species filled the seats. Their eyes watched the humans with a mixture of fear and wonder. High Arbiter, Nolith, sat on the highest platform. Scholar Tevin stood beside him, holding the ancient texts. Priestess Amori waited near the entrance, tears already flowing down her face. The humans walked to the center of the hall. Every step echoed in the silence. Admiral Park looked up at the gathered leaders. He saw their fear. He understood it. But he had not come to make them more afraid. He had come to remind them of something better. He began to speak. His voice was calm and strong. 12,000 years ago, humans came to this region of the galaxy. You were young civilizations then, beautiful and full of hope. But a darkness was coming, a threat that would have destroyed everything you were building. He paused, letting the words settle. Our ancestors could have run, They could have returned to their own galaxy and left you to die. No one would have blamed them. But that is not who we are. He looked at Tevin, who was weeping openly now. Stayed. They fought. They gave their lives not for glory or reward, but because they believed the galaxy was worth saving. They believed that life, in all its strange and wonderful forms, deserved a chance to grow. Admiral Park stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. They knew they would be forgotten. They accepted it. Because to them, the gift of your survival was enough. They did not need monuments. They did not need thanks. They needed only to know that somewhere, somehow, the children of the worlds they saved would live in peace. The hall was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. We did not know, the Admiral continued. Earth lost contact with those brave men and women. For 12,000 years, we thought they were simply gone. Lost to the void. But they were not lost. They were here, fighting, dying, saving. He turned in a slow circle, looking at every delegate. And now we have returned. Not to collect a debt. Not to demand payment. We came because we wanted to know if we were alone in the universe. We wanted to find friends. His voice dropped low. You attacked us. You've tried to destroy us. And I understand why. Fear makes people do terrible things. Fear made you forget the truth about us. He stood tall and proud. So let me remind you, humans do not fight because we enjoy killing. We fight because we love. We love our families. We love our friends. We love the innocent people who cannot defend themselves. And when we love something, there is nothing in the galaxy that can stop us from protecting it. He extended his hand toward Nolith. Your ancestors were worth dying for. Are you worth living with? Can we put aside the fear and become what we should have been 12,000 years ago? Allies, friends, family. The hall held its breath. High Arbiter Nolith rose slowly from his seat. He was old. He was proud. But he was not a fool. He had read the histories. He had seen the battle reports. He knew the truth. He walked down from his platform, step by slow step. The other delegates watched in shock. No arbiter had ever lowered himself to meet an outsider. Nolith stopped in front of Admiral Park. They were the same height. Their eyes met. I was wrong, Nolith said. His voice was quiet but clear. I allowed fear to guide me. I turned the memory of your sacrifice into a weapon of hatred. For that, I am sorry. I did something that had never happened in Confederation history. He bowed. The delegates gasped. Thousands of voices murmured in disbelief. On behalf of the Veli Confederation, Nolith said, still bowing, I ask for your forgiveness. And I ask for your friendship. Admiral Park took Nolith's hand and raised him gently. Friendship is given, not asked for, he said. You have it. Now and always, the hall erupted in cheers. Thousands of aliens rose to their feet, crying and shouting. The fear was washing away. Hope was taking its place. 3 days later, the Kethos Accord was signed. A treaty of peace and alliance between humanity and the Confederation. Ships would be shared. Knowledge would be traded. Old wounds would be healed. But there was one more thing Admiral Park needed to do. Priestess Amori led him to the Memorial of the Forgotten. It was an ancient place, covered in dust and weeds. No one had visited in centuries. A simple stone marker stood in the center. Sergeant Sua carried a folded Terran flag. She walked forward with military precision and placed it beside the ancient stone. Dr. Hana knelt down and read the words carved into the marker. They were in an old human language that the Veli had never been able to translate. Here stood the Terran Fourth Fleet, she read aloud, her voice breaking. They held the line. Remember us. Tears flowed freely. Admiral Park saluted. Captain Yuna saluted. Every human present raised their hand in honor. Around them, Veli citizens began to gather. They had followed the delegation out of curiosity. Now they stood in respectful silence as they finally learned the truth. Scholar Tevin fell to his knees. We forgot, he whispered. For 12,000 years, we forgot. Admiral Park helped him up. The past is gone. What matters is the future. and the future begins today. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, his ancestors were watching. He hoped they were proud. "We came home," he said softly. "We finished what you started. Rest now, heroes. The galaxy remembers." The Veli began to sing, a slow, beautiful song of mourning and gratitude. Their voices filled the night air, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the stars, something stirred. The darkness that humanity had sealed away so long ago. It was waking up. But that was a battle for another day. For now there was peace. There was friendship. There was hope. The walkers had returned, and the galaxy would never forget them again. Vela stood at the observation deck of the Velen cruiser and watched the stars pass by. She was young for a Velen, only 200 years old, but she had already risen to the rank of officer. Her silver skin glowed softly under the ship's lights, and her large dark eyes reflected the endless space before her. She was proud of her people. The Velans were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They could read minds, live for thousands of years, and their technology was far beyond most other species. Vala believed they were simply better than everyone else. Behind her, she could hear junior officers talking in low voices. They were gathered near the navigation console, sharing stories like children around a fire. Vila turned slightly to listen, her long pointed ears catching every word. "I heard about a human soldier who fought for 3 days without sleep," one officer said. "His name was Tall, and he was barely older than Vela. He carried his wounded friends across a desert until rescue came. When they found him, he was still walking, still carrying them." Another officer laughed nervously. "That cannot be true. Humans are so small, so fragile. They live for what, 80 years? Maybe 100 if they are lucky." "I am telling you what I heard," Tal said, "and there are other stories. A human medic once cut open her own body to remove a piece of metal that was killing her. She did it with no medicine for pain. She survived and saved her team after." Vila could not stay silent anymore. She walked toward the group with her arms crossed over her chest. The junior officers went quiet when they saw her coming. "What nonsense are you filling your heads with?" she asked. Her voice was sharp and cold. Tao looked down at the floor. "Officer Vela, we were just talking about humans. The stories about them." "Stories," Vela repeated. She said the word like it tasted bad in her mouth. "You mean lies? Primitive propaganda from a death world species that wants the galaxy to fear them." "But officer, some of these accounts come from verified sources," another officer said. Her name was Mira, and she was braver than the others. "Military records. Medical reports. Even our own Velen historians have written about human endurance." Bella laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Human endurance. "Let me tell you about human endurance. They break bones and cry for weeks. They get sick from their own food. They die from weather, from tiny creatures they cannot even see, from their own foolish choices. They are accidents of evolution from a planet that tried to kill them every single day. The only reason they survived is luck, nothing more." She looked at each officer in turn, making sure they understood. "These legends you hear are survival fantasies. Weak species always create stories about being strong. It makes them feel better about their short, painful lives." The officers were silent. None of them wanted to argue with Vela. She was known for her sharp tongue and her refusal to admit she was wrong about anything. But then a calm voice came from behind them all. "You should be careful. Vila, words spoken from ignorance often return to teach us lessons." Vila turned and saw Commander Aura walking toward them. Aura was old, even by Velen standards. Her silver skin had faded to a pale gray, and her movements were slow but steady. She had served on ships for over 3,000 years and had seen more of the galaxy than anyone else on this cruiser. Commander Vila said, bowing her head slightly. "I meant no disrespect. I was simply correcting some misunderstandings among the junior staff." "Were you?" Aura said. She stopped in front of Vila and looked at her with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "I have worked with humans, Vila. I have fought beside them and against them. I have watched them die and watched them refuse to die when all logic said they should." "They are just another species," Vela said. Nothing special, Aura said quietly. They are not strong despite their fragility. They are strong because of it. They know they will die. They know their time is short. And so they burn brighter than species who have forever. They fight harder, love deeper, and sacrifice more willingly than any race I have ever known. Vila wanted to argue, but something in Aura's voice stopped her. The old commander was not joking. She was not exaggerating. She believed every word she was saying. I think you give him too much credit, Vela finally said. No species that lives barely a century could ever be worthy of such myths. Aura smiled, but it was a sad smile. I hope you never have to learn the truth the hard way, young one. But the galaxy has a way of teaching lessons to those who refuse to listen. Before Vila could respond, an alarm rang through the ship. Red lights flashed along the walls and the deck vibrated beneath their feet. Distress signal, Tal announced, reading the navigation console. Coming from a mining colony on the volcanic moon of Keith 4, they say they are under attack. Raiders. Commander Aura moved quickly toward the main control station. Set course immediately. Full speed? Commander Vela said, following her. That colony is in neutral space. We have no obligation to help them. Aura looked at her with something close to disappointment. We have every obligation. There are lives at risk. Velen lives. Human lives. Other species too. We go, Vela said. Nothing more. She watched as the ship changed direction and the stars shifted around them. She did not know it yet. But her entire understanding of the galaxy was about to change. On that burning moon, in the smoke and chaos of battle, she would meet someone who would show her that legends were not just stories. Some legends walked among the stars, and one of them was waiting for her.